He never wanted the job. That's what he told himself now, staring at the empty parking lot of Black Pine National Park, where 3 cars sat abandoned since Thursday. The wind stirred the pine needles in lazy spirals. The sky was low, gray, waiting to rain. It smelled like wet bark and something else. Faint, metallic, wrong. He shifted the rifle on his shoulder, feeling its familiar weight. His name was Cole. Not a rookie, not a hero, just a man who signed up for silence. Years ago, after too many nights drinking himself into blackout, he left the city. No more sirens, no more fights, just trees, just space to forget. That's all he wanted. Then they went missing. 6 tourists, 2 couples, 1 solo hiker, 1 teenage boy, all reported on the same day, but no one had seen them together. Different trails, different times. All vanished like smoke, and he was the last person to talk to them. It started small, like it always does. A woman at the ranger station said her boyfriend hadn't come back to their rental cabin. Cole radioed patrol, marked the incident, said he'd keep an eye out. Nothing big. People got lost, took detours. Happens all the time. But then a family flagged him down, said their son never returned from a solo walk. Then 2 more reports within the next 3 hours. By sundown, 6 were gone. No panic at first. Just protocol, grid searches, radio calls, helicopters denied due to weather. Cole kept his calm because he always did. He was trained to. People looked at him like he had answers, but he didn't. He remembered the woman, curly hair, anxious. Her name was Lydia, maybe. She asked him if the park had any bad spots. What the hell did that mean? He brushed it off, smiled the way rangers are taught to smile, calming, professional, firm. The truth was, Cole had heard stories. Whispers among older rangers about places you didn't map. Areas where the compass spun, where your radio got static even on clear days. But those were just stories, right? He'd gone looking that evening. Just a short hike, flashlight in hand, sticking to the most used trail. Birds were quiet, the forest too still, no snapped twigs, no animal calls, just cold and silence. That's when he found the shoe. Small, canvas, soaked in mud. One of the tourists had worn those, he remembered. The solo hiker. And next to it, 5 deep, perfect boot prints. Lined up, standing still, facing one direction. Like someone had been watching. He didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. He sat on his porch with the rifle beside him. Not because he thought he'd need it, but because it felt like something was off. And because deep down, he wasn't sure they were just lost. The next morning, the search teams went out again. Nothing. Not a single clue. No bodies, no blood, not even dropped gear. Just empty woods and that damn silence. By the 3rd day, people stopped calling it missing. They started calling it taken. Cole hated that word. It wasn't official, it wasn't helpful. But he couldn't shake the feeling either. Because when he'd gone deeper into the woods the 2nd time, he'd seen something he didn't talk about. A clearing that shouldn't exist. Perfect circle, no trees. Dead leaves everywhere, as if something had drained the life out of the place. In the center, a metal pole. Rusted and snapped, like an old sign had once been there. No footprints, no wind, just a noise he couldn't explain. A deep hum, low in the ground, almost like the earth was breathing. He left in a rush, heart pounding, skin cold. He didn't radio it in, didn't mark it on the map. Some things you just don't put in writing. Now, it was the 6th day. And Cole stood at the edge of the same trail, staring into the woods, knowing full well something waited for him in there. Something old, something watching, He didn't believe in monsters, but he believed in things going wrong. And in the woods of Black Pine, things had gone very, very wrong. He took one last look at the empty lot, whispered something under his breath, and stepped into the forest. Cole walked deeper into Black Pine, boots pressing into damp soil, the forest swallowing him bit by bit. Trees closed around him like ribs of some old beast, hunched and waiting. The deeper he went, the heavier the air got, like something was pressing on his chest, unseen and slow. The morning had started overcast, but now the sky above the thick pine canopy had turned to steel, the kind of lightless gray that made everything look like it belonged in black and white. Cole didn't mind it. He preferred the gloom, gave him focus, kept out the distractions, and truth be told, he didn't want to see too clearly right now. Every tree looked familiar. Every rock seemed like one he'd passed already, but the forest wasn't looping. He knew the trails. Hell, he'd walked them for years. Black Pine wasn't like the other parks. It wasn't built for tourism. It was old, untouched, raw in the way only real wilderness can be. There were places here even GPS gave up on. Rangers joked about it, about the dead zones. But now it didn't feel funny. He stopped at a marker, trail number 17B, a rusted metal post with chipped white paint and a bullet hole right through the number. It always bothered him. Not because of the vandalism, but because the bullet hole looked fresh. No rust, no blood, just clean puncture in cold steel. No one was ever punished for it. Mostly because no one could explain who'd done it, or why that one marker had been singled out. A prank, maybe, but it felt off. Cole took out his notebook and flipped to the last page. 6 names, written in shaky pen. Lydia, Carlos, Peter, 16, Marla, Vince, solo hiker, unknown name. He stared at the list longer than he meant to. That last one bugged him. No ID, no social, no reservation. Just a man seen by 2 other hikers walking alone down Trail 17B, wearing a flannel jacket and a green backpack. No one saw him again after that. Cole folded the notebook and slid it into his jacket. He pressed forward, ducking under a low branch. The trees grew denser here. Close. Too close. He ran his hand along the bark of a twisted pine. It felt wrong. Too smooth, like stone, not wood. He didn't stop walking, but his eyes kept drifting back. Every 20 steps he looked over his shoulder. Not because he was afraid of getting lost. No, that wasn't it. It was the sense that something behind him didn't want to be seen. Like shadows rearranged themselves when he wasn't looking. He heard something then. Not loud, not close. A sharp snapping sound, like a branch under pressure. He froze, waited. Nothing. Just the wind again, whistling low between the trunks. He took out his walkie and pressed the button. Static. Control, this is Ranger Cole. Do you read? Nothing but the soft hiss of dead air. He tried again. Still nothing. No panic yet. He'd been here before. Dead spots were common, temporary. Still, he made a note in his mind. Radio died near 17B, just like last time. He kept moving. The ground sloped downward now, steep and wet. Moss clung to rocks like skin. His boots slipped twice before he finally reached a flat clearing. His breath caught. It was the same one. The circle. Empty, unnatural. No grass, no plants. Just dead pine needles covering cold dirt. In the middle, still standing, still rusted, that same broken pole. He approached it slowly, heart tapping against his ribs. Up close, he could see what the pole used to hold, a sign, shattered and half buried under the dirt. He bent down and pulled it free. The letters were worn, flaked but still legible. Sector 9, closed permanently, do not enter. He'd never seen a map with a Sector 9, not in Black Pine, not in any of the official ranger documents. This wasn't just old, it was scrubbed, like someone wanted it gone. And yet here it was. He stood up, suddenly aware of how quiet it had gotten. Not just the birds gone quiet, everything was quiet, no wind, no bugs, no hum from the trees. Just absolute choking stillness. Then the smell hit him. Not strong, but there. Decay. He moved slowly, scanning the edges of the clearing. The smell wasn't everywhere. It was coming from a specific direction. North, maybe 20 feet into the trees. He hesitated, hand gripping the rifle harder, then stepped into the underbrush. It didn't take long to find it. Half a boot, black, canvas. The laces were frayed and the fabric torn open. Inside, still laced up, bones. Small ones. Cole's throat tightened, not a full skeleton. Just the foot, still in the boot, rotting slow. He knelt beside it, hands shaking. The body wasn't here. No torn clothes, no scattered remains. Just the foot. He stood and turned in a slow circle, eyes sharp, ears straining. Something moved at the edge of his vision, left side, fast and low. He whipped the rifle up. Nothing. Then a whisper. So quiet it didn't feel like sound. Felt more like a thought that wasn't his. Don't follow. He took a step back. The air changed, cool to cold, like walking into a freezer. His breath fogged out in front of him. He stumbled back to the clearing, half running, half tripping. When he reached the circle again, he fell to his knees, gasping. The cold lifted. The pressure on his chest eased, but now something else gnawed at him. Fear. Deep and primal. Not fear of animals or people, but the fear you feel when the rules stop applying. He looked around again, heart thumping. That's when he noticed something new. Footprints. Not his. 6 sets. All coming from different directions. All leading into the clearing, none leading out. He counted again, breath catching. 6. 6 missing people. And in the center, just under the rusted pole, a 7th set of prints. Large, heavy, deep in the dirt. But they didn't come in from the outside. They started in the middle. Cole backed away slowly. His mind went to the solo hiker again, the one with no name. What if he hadn't gone missing? What if he had come from here? His walkie buzzed suddenly, shrill and loud. He flinched and dropped it. It crackled. Then a voice whispering, thin like smoke, "Turn around." He did. Nothing, just trees. But when he turned back, the footprints were gone. Completely. He picked up the walkie with shaking hands. "Who is this? Identify yourself." Static, then silence. The forest returned to normal in waves. Sounds came back. A bird called in the distance. Wind rustled leaves. His breath slowed. But he didn't feel calm. He felt watched. Cole turned back toward the main trail, started walking fast, almost jogging. Every 30 feet he looked back. He didn't stop until the clearing was out of sight and the marker 17B came back into view. He didn't go straight to the station. He sat at an old stump just past the trail, rifle across his knees, hands gripping it like a lifeline. And there, in the stillness of the late morning, he realized something else. He wasn't alone in the woods. And whatever was out there, it wanted him to come back. But not to find the missing. Number it wanted him to stay. Cole didn't tell anyone. He got back to the station just before dark. The old wooden outpost creaked in the wind like a sinking ship. No one else was there. Half the team had rotated out already. The others were covering different search zones. That left him alone, just how he wanted it. The lights buzzed overhead, weak and flickering. He stood by the radio for 10 minutes before even touching it. His hand hovered over the mic, then he pulled it back. What was he going to say? Hey, I found a restricted sector we never knew existed. A circle of death in the woods with ghost footprints, a severed foot still laced in a shoe, and something whispering in my head like it knew my name. Yeah, that'd go over well. He dropped his gear on the desk and sat down heavily. The place smelled like old coffee and oil. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. He stared at it without really seeing. What stuck with him most wasn't the boot or the footprints. It was that voice. Turn around. Not loud, not commanding, just matter of fact, like it already knew what he'd do. And then the footprints were gone. He rubbed his eyes with both hands, then reached for the bottle in his desk drawer. Cheap whiskey. He hadn't touched it in 6 months. He poured a finger into a chipped coffee mug, downed it in one pull. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he spent the hours going through every park file he could find. Old maps, patrol logs, outdated ranger handbooks. Some of it was garbage. Most of it was sanitized for public use. But buried deep in the oldest logbooks, under a pile of torn maps, he found something strange. A hand-drawn map. No title, no date. Faded ink and frayed edges. It showed the park as it was. Back before the expansions, before the public trails were paved and the campsites manicured. And there, in the far north quadrant, past Trail 17B, was a faint marking. SNI, Sector 9. He stared at it for a long time. There were notes scrawled in the margins, hard to read. One line stood out, written in darker ink. S9, closed by federal order, 1978. No entry without direct clearance. Non-compliance punishable. No entry in a national park? He kept reading, eyes scanning fast. The rest was vague. Mentions of incident, containment, and one word that gave him chills. Echoes. What the hell were echoes? He leaned back in his chair, the floorboards groaning beneath him. His hand drifted to the notebook in his coat. He opened it, stared again at the 6 names. 6 people who walked into Black Pine and never came back. He added one more word beneath the last name. Echoes? The room felt colder now. Around 4 a.m., something hit the window. He jumped, knocking the chair back. Rifle in hand, he crossed the room in 2 steps, nothing outside. Just trees, darkness, and moonlight. But there, on the glass, was a smear. Not blood, not dirt, something between, like ash mixed with grease, streaked by a hand. He stepped out onto the porch, scanning the woods with his flashlight. No sounds, no wind. Then he heard it again. Not a branch, not a bird, breathing, right behind him. He spun, light cutting through shadows, rifle raised. No one there, just his own heartbeat crashing in his ears. He stayed outside till sunrise. When the sun finally climbed over the pines, it looked sickly and pale, like a dying bulb. He packed up quickly, rifle, pack, notebook, flask. He didn't bother telling anyone where he was going, would have just raised questions. Questions he didn't have answers to. He hiked back toward the Trail 17B, this time faster, more direct. No hesitation. He passed the same marker, same rusted post, same bullet hole. And there, just 20 yards ahead, he saw something that made him stop cold. A man, standing in the middle of the trail. Tall, thin, dressed in flannel, green backpack, the solo hiker, the one no one could name. Cole raised a hand. "Hey, You lost?" The man didn't respond, didn't move, didn't even blink. Cole took a step forward, then another. When he was within 30 feet, the man finally moved, but not naturally. His head tilted, slow and mechanical, like it was being turned by someone else. Then he smiled. It wasn't right. The teeth were wrong. Too white, too even, too many. Cole raised the rifle, instincts flaring. "Don't move." The man took one step backward, then turned, and walked straight into the trees. Cole chased him without thinking. Branches tore at his clothes, roots snagged his boots, but he kept going, driven by something deeper than logic. The man, or whatever it was, stayed just out of reach, always visible, always one step ahead. Then the trees opened up, and Cole was back in the clearing, the circle, same dead ground, same rusted pole, but now it was different. There was a shape at the center, a hole, wide and dark, a perfect circle in the earth. The man stopped at the edge, looked back at Cole, then stepped in, vanished. No sound, no fall, just gone. Cole stood at the edge, panting, sweat freezing on his skin. The hole was deep, deeper than made sense. No light reached the bottom, no echo came back. He dropped a rock in, no sound, no bounce, just silence. Then a voice behind him, not loud, not human. "Cole?" He turned. Nothing. He ran. Didn't stop until he reached the ridge above Trail 17B. He dropped to his knees, heaving, the forest spinning around him. That night, back at the station, he didn't sleep. He sat on the porch, rifle across his lap, watching the trees. The wind whispered. The trees shifted. And from somewhere deep inside Black Pine, something called his name again. Not loud, not demanding, just waiting. Cole didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. He didn't call it in, didn't file a report, he just clocked in, patrolled like he was supposed to, kept his head down, and waited for someone else to notice what he had. But no one did. No one mentioned the solo hiker. No one brought up Sector 9. Even the missing persons reports had stopped being updated. It was like the entire situation had gone quiet, too quiet, and that scared him more than anything else. The search teams were thinning out. HQ had already started shifting focus, saying, "There's a possibility the group exited the park undetected." The paperwork said, "Open case," but Cole had been around long enough to know what that meant. They were closing the books without saying it out loud, letting it fade away, like it always did. He sat in the break room one afternoon, hands wrapped around a mug of stale coffee, staring at the wall where the park's large topographical map hung. The borders were marked, the trails labeled, but the northern corner, the part beyond Trail 17B, was blank. Just a gray void. That blank space itched at his brain. He had to know more. That night, he waited until the others were gone. Then he went into the restricted archives. The key was old, never used, still taped to the bottom of a drawer marked "Old Keys, Unknown Use." He pried open the dusty file cabinet in the corner of the main lodge, coughing as years of dust exploded into his face. Inside were manila folders, yellowed, cracked at the edges. Most were maintenance logs, weather data, tree population stats. Nothing useful. Until he found a thin black binder, unmarked, stuffed between two binders on bear migration. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, old, black and white, with jagged white borders and fading ink on the back. They showed the same clearing he'd seen with his own eyes. Sector 9. But the photos were decades old. In them, men in ranger uniforms stood around the circle, grim-faced, rifles in hand. One of the photos showed what looked like a mass grave. At least 5 bodies partially unearthed, limbs stiff, twisted, mouths open in silent screams. Cole swallowed hard. He flipped to the last page, a typed report, dated 1978. Author redacted. Operation Black Root concluded. Containment partially successful. Subjects 3, 6, and 9 neutralized. Echoes remain present within Sector 9. Recommend permanent closure. Human exposure below threshold to justify national attention. Maintain silence. Any reappearance must trigger immediate isolation protocol. Cole read the line again. Echoes remain present. He closed the binder, sat back, mind spinning. What the hell had happened out there? And what was an echo? He stayed in the archive for another hour, flipping through every document he could find. Most were useless, but a crumpled note at the back of a logbook stopped him cold. If you hear your name, don't answer. If they ask for help, don't follow. They remember pain, they wear familiar skin, but they're not people anymore. He left the archive shaking. That night, something scratched at the windows again. The next morning, Cole made a decision. He was going back into Sector 9, not to search, not to report. He needed to end this. He packed lightly. Rifle, flashlight, notebook, small first aid kit. No phone. It wouldn't work out there anyway, just instincts and memory. He left before dawn, slipping past the early patrols. The woods greeted him like an old enemy, silent, dark, waiting. The hike took 2 hours. At Trail 17B, the sky dimmed again, clouds curling in over the ridge. He passed the bullet-ridden marker and kept going, deeper until the air changed, until the trees grew wrong, and the world bent just slightly sideways. He found the clearing again, but this time he wasn't alone. There were 3 people standing at the edge of the circle, a woman, a teenage boy, and a man with a backpack. Cole froze, heart hammering. The woman turned first. "Cole?" Her voice was soft, familiar. It was Lydia. He took a step forward, then stopped. Her eyes weren't right, too wide, too dark, like the pupil had swallowed the iris. "Help us," she whispered, "please." The boy stepped forward next. Peter, 16, missing for a week. His jeans were torn, his shirt soaked in something dark. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Just a thin, high-pitched whine, like radio static. Cole gripped his rifle tighter. "What are you?" he said. The third figure, the solo hiker, smiled. "We're still here," he said, voice calm. "We never left." Then they stepped forward. Not running, not lunging, just walking, like a family stroll. Cole backed away, breath shallow. "Stay back." They didn't. He raised the rifle. "I said stay." The boy blinked and vanished. So did the woman. The hiker took one more step. Then he, too, blinked out of existence. Gone. The clearing was empty. Dead leaves swirled at his feet. He turned in a full circle, breath ragged. "Show yourselves!" he shouted. Silence. Then something behind him whispered, "We remember you." He spun, too late. A flash of light, a sound like breaking glass, and everything went black. When he woke up, he was underground. At least, he thought it was underground. The air was thick, wet, like breathing through cotton. It was pitch black, No sky, no trees, just damp stone and something dripping nearby. He sat up slowly, body aching. His flashlight was gone. So was the rifle. The only thing left was the notebook in his jacket. He pulled it out, flipped to the last page. New writing had appeared, jagged, as if carved by a nail. Sector 9 isn't a place, it's a memory. He stared at the words, throat dry. A memory? He got to his feet, hands feeling along the wall. Stone, cold, slick with moisture. He followed it blindly. After what felt like hours, he saw light, faint and green, pulsing from around a bend. He turned the corner and stopped. There, in the center of a cavern, stood something tall and hunched. Not human, not anymore. Its skin was pale, like stretched paper. Its limbs too long, its mouth too wide, and in its chest 6 faces blinked. Lydia, Carlos, Peter, Marla, Vince, the hiker. Their faces moved inside the thing, mouths opening in silent cries, eyes pleading. Cole stepped back, bile rising. The creature turned. It didn't walk, it shifted, and when it spoke, it used all 6 voices. Come join us. Cole ran, blind through tunnels, past walls that breathed, past whispers that clawed at his mind. He didn't stop until he saw moonlight, until the trees opened up again, until he was back in the clearing, alone, gasping, alive. He dropped to his knees, then he laughed, bitter, broken, because now he knew the truth. Sector 9 wasn't closed because it was dangerous. It was closed because it couldn't be explained. Because what lived there wasn't evil, it was us, the pieces we leave behind when we forget. The pain we bury, the memories we erase. The forest didn't take the missing people. It showed them what they really were. And now it had shown him too. Cole didn't speak for the first hour after he emerged from the clearing. His body was soaked in sweat and dirt. His hands trembled uncontrollably. His eyes, wide, unblinking, locked on the ground as if the earth itself might crack open again. Every sound made him flinch. A crow calling somewhere above sent a jolt down his spine like a live wire. He didn't look back. Not once. He walked until the trail markers came back into view, until the wind returned, and with it the distant hum of a river, the normal world if you could call it that. And even then, the woods still felt wrong. Warped. Like Sector 9 had bled into everything. It was dark by the time he reached the station. No one was there. Of course not. He stood on the porch for a long time, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles went pale. The night pressed against the windows like a weight. He knew, deep down, that something had followed him back. Not in form, but in memory. It had its hooks in him now. He walked inside, turned on every light in the building. Then he locked every door. The mirrors were the worst. Every time he looked in one, he saw something just slightly off. A flicker in the background. A shift in the reflection. Once, in the bathroom mirror, he swore he saw Peter's face instead of his own, mouth open in a scream that made no sound. He smashed that mirror with his fist. Didn't even feel the pain. Just bled onto the floor and stared at the glass shards for an hour, watching them shimmer like a shattered sky. The notebook was still in his jacket. He opened it slowly, expecting more writing that wasn't his. And there it was. New lines. Sector 9 is awake. You brought it back with you. We remember you, Cole. He dropped the notebook and staggered back. The name. His name. Whatever it was, Whatever had grown in the black heart of that forest, it knew who he was now. Not just a ranger, not just a witness, but a key. The next morning, he tried to report what happened. He drove into town, used a diner phone since his cell was still useless, called the regional ranger station, asked for his supervisor. The woman on the other end sounded confused. "There's no Ranger Cole listed at Black Pine, sir." His mouth went dry. "What? I've been assigned here for 2 years." She paused. "Sir, Black Pine has no active assignments. That station was decommissioned after the fire in '98. He gripped the phone tighter. "What fire?" Hold on." Papers rustled. Faint voices in the background. Then she came back. "Yes, according to our files, the Black Pine facility was shut down after a containment breach. You wouldn't be stationed there. That's impossible." He hung up, drove back in silence. And sure enough, when he reached the tree line, something was different. The forest entrance sign, Black Pine National Park, was gone. In its place, nothing. Just overgrown grass and trees like a wall of green. No road signs, no trail markers. It was like the entire place had been erased. He parked the truck and walked the path on foot. After 15 minutes, he found the station. But now it was a ruin, charred, collapsed, half covered in vines, as if it had been abandoned for years. He stepped over the wreckage and stood in the ash. His desk was there, blackened but intact. The file cabinet still existed, bent and rusted shut. The archive? Gone. The photos? Ash. He knelt beside the frame of the station and picked up a fragment of his notebook. Burned at the edges, still faintly legible. "They wear familiar skin." That's all it said. He backed away slowly, ears ringing. What the hell had happened? Had he imagined it? Was he already mad? Or had the forest moved through time itself? Number? No, he remembered the screams. He remembered their faces. Too clearly to be madness. Whatever Sector 9 was, it didn't just live in space. It infected memory. It rewrote the past to protect itself. And now he was infected too. Back at the truck, he tried the radio. Static. He tried his phone. Nothing. Even GPS was gone. Just a spinning circle on a blank map. Like the world was slowly forgetting him. Or he'd crossed into something else entirely. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the truck with the rifle in his lap, watching the woods. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that creature again. The long limbs, the hollow chest, the 6 faces screaming from inside it. And now, sometimes, when he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw a 7th face forming. His own. He spent the next 3 days in that truck, driving in circles, trying to leave. But the roads looped back on themselves. The signs changed when he looked away. Once, he drove for 6 straight hours north, only to end up back at the clearing, standing outside the rusted pole again. The hole was still there, wider now, breathing. He didn't go in, not yet. Instead, he returned to the ruins of the station and found something waiting for him. A box. Plain, wooden, sitting on the porch where the door used to be, inside it. His notebook. Fully intact, no burn marks. He opened it slowly. More writing. Don't run. Don't speak. You're part of us now. And beneath that, a list of names. Not just the 6 missing tourists, but hundreds. People he didn't know. People who'd never made the news. Every name scratched in the same jagged hand. And at the very bottom, Cole, confirmed. He dropped the notebook and stumbled back. "N.O.," he shouted into the trees. "You don't get to take me." But the forest didn't answer. It just listened. That night he saw them again, all of them. Lydia, Peter, Carlos, Marla, Vince, the solo hiker. They stood at the edge of the ruins, watching. Not speaking, just waiting. Their eyes glowed faintly. And when he looked into them long enough, he saw memories, his memories. His old life, the fights, the guilt, the things he tried to forget. They weren't ghosts, they were echoes of him, of everyone. All the pain, all the shame, all the choices we try to bury. That's what Sector 9 really was. Not a place, a wound, a memory the earth itself had tried to forget. And Cole had opened it. He raised the rifle. "I'm not like you." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He dropped the rifle and walked into the woods, back toward the clearing, back toward the hole. He didn't know why. He just knew it was time. The last thing he remembered was the trees parting like a curtain, and the earth swallowing him whole. There was no falling. One moment Cole stepped into the hole, the black eye of the forest, and the next he was somewhere else entirely. Not underground, not inside the earth, but inside something older, something alive. It wasn't a place. It was a feeling. Time didn't pass here. It folded. It throbbed in strange pulses, like breath or a heartbeat. And everywhere around him was memory, hanging in the air like mist. He could feel it in his lungs, heavy and bitter, like breathing in someone else's grief. Shapes drifted in the dark. Not solid, not ghostly. They were moments, fractured emotions, snatches of conversation long dead. He walked through them like a man wading through a dream. "Why did you leave me?" a voice whispered. Female, familiar. He turned, Lydia again. Her form shimmered in the black like a reflection on water. "I didn't," he said, but the words came out hollow. "You let me walk into the trees," she said. "You knew something was wrong, but you smiled, you waved." Cole stepped back. "That wasn't me." "It was," she hissed. Her face twisted, flickering into something monstrous for a second, then back to the scared young woman he remembered. Then she vanished, and Peter stood in her place. No mouth this time, just a hollow in his face, his eyes dripping something black. "I was just a kid," he whispered. Inside Cole's skull, not through ears. "I looked at you, and I felt safe. You let me go, you let me disappear." Cole turned, stumbled, ran, through memories that clung to him like spider webs. His boots hit no ground, but he moved anyway, through a shifting tunnel of time and guilt and shadow. He stopped when he saw himself. Not a mirror, not a reflection. Him, 10 years younger, in a uniform from a different forest. City Park Service, back when he still believed in rules, in doing things right. His younger self stood over a man on the ground, bleeding, handcuffed. "Please," the man coughed. "I didn't do anything." Young Cole raised a baton, his face blank. His arm swung down, hard, again and again. Cole screamed, "Stop!" But the scene kept going, blood spraying, bone cracking. The younger version of him didn't blink, just kept hitting. Cold, mechanical. Then the memory dissolved, and the real Cole was left standing in silence, shaking. He had forgotten that day, buried it deep. Just following orders, he told himself, for years. The man had been accused of something violent. They needed to handle him before backup arrived. Cole did what they told him to do, but he'd liked the power. He'd liked not being questioned. And now the forest remembered. It remembered everything. He fell to his knees. "You can't do this," he whispered to the black around him. "This isn't justice." No response. But in the distance he heard something breathing again. Deep, slow, wet. It was coming. Not the creature from before, something bigger, older. Something that wasn't part of him, but had been waiting for him. He stood and ran again, but this time the space around him bent with each step. Memories warped. Reality twisted. He passed through a cabin he'd never seen before, its walls made of bones, its windows glowing red. Inside, people sat at a long table, not eating, just staring at plates filled with teeth. They didn't move. They didn't speak. But as he passed, they turned their heads in unison. Each face was someone he had failed. Victims from old case files. Campers who vanished over the years. A girl he once lied to about a search effort being ongoing when it had already been called off. They stared at him without blinking. And he knew this was Sector 9's truth. This wasn't hell. This was a ledger, a record of every betrayal buried under trees and time. A memory so powerful, it had become a place. And now it wanted him to stay. He broke into a sprint, desperate, wild, lungs burning. The path closed behind him. The air thickened. Voices screamed from the walls. Then, light, blinding. He burst into a space unlike anything else he'd seen. A massive dome, skyless, root-covered, glowing with the same green pulse as before. At the center stood the thing, taller now. Its limbs dragging, its mouth opened wide, not to speak, but to sing. A chorus of all the voices he'd heard merged into one. Cole fell to the floor, sobbing. He didn't have the strength to raise the rifle, even if he'd brought it. This wasn't a thing he could shoot. This was judgment. And it had already decided. Then the creature stepped back, opened its chest, and Cole saw one final face, his own, eyes closed, mouth slack, waiting. It was an invitation. The forest wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to absorb him, to make him part of the memory, to let him vanish like the others. And God help him. He wanted it. He wanted the silence, the forgetting, the peace of not carrying this weight anymore. He crawled forward, hands shaking, reached out toward his own face, then stopped. A sound cut through the dome. A single bird call, real, natural. The forest had slipped. It had let the outside world in. Cole pulled back, gasping. "No," he whispered, "I'm still alive." He turned and ran, not away from the thing, but upward. He didn't know how. Didn't know if there was an exit, but he ran. And with each step, the memories screamed louder, begging him to return, to finish what he started, to become what they were. But he kept going. Through tunnels of bone, past rivers of ash, climbing higher and higher, until the black broke, and the trees came back, and he was standing in the clearing again, gasping, crying, alive, but not whole, never whole again. He dropped to the forest floor, and the hole closed behind him, silently, like it had never been there. Back at the ruined station, Cole sat for hours. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched the tree line, waiting to be pulled back. But the forest stayed quiet. No voices, no faces, just wind and birdsong. He looked at his reflection in a broken window, still him, but different. Eyes heavier, like he'd aged years in a day. He touched his chest. No face there, yet, but he could feel it. Growing. He opened the notebook one last time. One line stared back at him. "You remember now." And he did. All of it. Cole didn't leave Black Pine. He couldn't. Not because he was trapped, not physically anyway. The roads were back. The signs returned. GPS started working again, as if the forest had decided to let him go. But even with the truck idling at the edge of the tree line, full tank, engine humming, he couldn't bring himself to turn the wheel. His hands just sat there, gripping, trembling, like the steering column might bite him. The memory of the thing, no, not a thing, the thing, still lived in his spine. That long-limbed echo, the one that opened its chest and showed him his own face like a mirror carved in wrought. He'd run from it, but running didn't mean leaving. The forest had changed him. He could feel it under his skin. That night, he sat at the edge of the tree line, just beyond the ruins of the ranger station, fire crackling low. It was cold, summer cold, that eerie temperature drop that happens after the sun slips away in the mountains. Everything got too still again. His notebook sat in his lap. Blank now. Completely clean. Every page that once carried the names of the missing, the messages, the warnings, gone. As if it had never been written in at all. Like memory had been devoured. He tried writing one of the names again. Lydia. But the ink faded as soon as he lifted the pen. Vanished. Even the pen felt wrong, cold, slick. Like it remembered what he'd tried to do with it. Cole shut the book and stared into the fire. That's when the first shadow appeared. Just a flicker on the far side of the flames. He didn't flinch, he'd learned not to. The forest played games. It tugged your eyes in the dark, made you doubt where your vision ended and your guilt began. But this shadow didn't move like the others. It stood still, then sat across from him, right on the other side of the fire. He didn't need to see the face. He knew who it was. Carlos, the first to vanish. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Cole muttered. Carlos didn't speak, just stared. His eyes had no white left, just flat, black pits like polished stone. "You blaming me?" Cole asked, voice tired. "Still nothing. You should. I let you walk that trail alone. I didn't even mark the warning signs. Just let protocol do the talking. Didn't trust my gut, didn't listen to yours." Carlos smiled. But it wasn't human. Teeth too wide, too perfect. Same as the creature. Cole stood suddenly, kicked dirt over the fire. The light vanished. So did Carlos. The night took him back. But the guilt didn't fade. It was growing now, coiling inside him. By morning, his reflection was different again. Eyes a little darker, his voice lower, like it echoed. Like something else was starting to speak with him. Over the next few days, he wandered the forest like a ghost. He avoided the clearing, refused to step near Trail 17B, but the trees still whispered. They knew he'd been marked, and he could feel the echo now, not as a thing in the woods, but as a pressure inside his skull. Always there, always humming. Sometimes, when he walked, he'd blink and lose hours. Once, he woke up kneeling beside the old rusted pole with dirt under his fingernails and no memory of how he got there. Another time, he found the rifle he'd left behind, wrapped in vines, waiting for him, like the forest was staging its pieces, preparing. He tried leaving again, once, made it all the way to the town 40 miles east, parked outside a motel, checked in under a fake name, sat on the bed, tried to feel normal. But when he looked in the mirror, his eyes blinked out of sync. One blinked twice, the other didn't close at all. He smashed that mirror too. That night the clerk went missing, just gone. No struggle, no signs of forced entry. Cole knew where he'd gone. The forest had followed. Or maybe he had brought it with him. He drove back the next day, back into Black Pine, back into the trees. This was his now. Or maybe he was its. On the 7th night since the escape, the dreams started. He was underground again, but not in the same blackness. Now it was red. A blood-colored haze, roots pulsing like veins. The faces no longer screamed, they sang. And the song was his life. Every lie he'd told, every sin he'd buried. Every time he'd said, "I don't know," when he did know. Every time he'd looked the other way. The dreams didn't frighten him anymore. They just made him tired. Then came the 8th night. He stood at the edge of a cliff somewhere deeper in the forest, one he didn't recognize, though he'd sworn he'd walked every inch of Black Pine. Below him, a river churned, black water, no moon. Behind him, footsteps. He turned, expecting nothing, but saw himself. Not as he was, as he had been, before the forest. Clean face, clear eyes, that fresh uniform, that empty confidence. Young Cole nodded. "You should have let me die back there," the younger version said. Cole didn't speak. "You let the others go because you didn't want to believe," the younger continued. "That's the truth." "I didn't know what I was looking at," Cole said. "You knew enough." Silence. The two Coles stared at each other, a mirror made of memory. Then the younger one stepped forward, leaned in close. "You're going back." "No, you never left." And then he shoved him. Cole tumbled. Over the edge. He woke up screaming, covered in sweat, mouth full of dirt, lying in the same circle where it all began. The pole was gone now. So was the hole. Just earth. Cold. Silent. But it had marked him again, this time on his chest. He pulled open his shirt. There, just above his heart, was a bruise. Circular and deep, like something inside him was trying to open. The bruise didn't fade. Every morning, Cole checked it, hoping maybe it would change, shift, lessen. It didn't. It got darker. By the 4th day, it wasn't a bruise anymore. It was a shape. Perfect circle. Etched into his chest like a brand. Raised slightly, warm to the touch. Sometimes it pulsed, like a second heart. He didn't tell anyone. Not that there was anyone to tell. Black Pine was abandoned now, and not officially. No one came back after the search ended. The station was still rubble, the signs all gone. The place was ghosted. On paper, it didn't exist anymore, just like him. He hadn't seen another ranger in over 2 weeks. Not even hikers. It was like the forest had been erased from the map. And yet, every now and then, he saw people. Not real ones. Reflections of people he once knew. Faces he remembered. Voices he couldn't forget. They'd stand in the distance, across a clearing or at the edge of the river, watching him. Sometimes smiling, sometimes crying, never speaking. He'd blink, and they'd vanish. But not always right away. Sometimes they held on just long enough to be noticed. He tried to ignore them. For the first few days, he'd even tried to run. But eventually he stopped fighting. They weren't going anywhere. and neither was he. The notebook had come back again. He found it hanging from a branch one morning, tied with thin sinew, still blank, until he touched it. Then the words bloomed again. But this time, they weren't names. They were memories. His. Age 6, lied about killing the neighbor's dog. Age 13, watched his father hit his mother and didn't speak up. Age 17, let a friend take the fall for a stolen wallet. Age 24, didn't stop when the hiker screamed. Age 32, watched Lydia walk away, said nothing. Page after page. Every lie, every moment of cowardice, every sin he'd buried in silence. And in the center of the book, a new word appeared. Large, bold, submission. Cole closed the notebook, threw it into the fire. But even as it burned, he could feel the heat rising from his chest. The mark pulsed harder, faster. The forest wanted something. He could feel it now. And it wasn't just memories, it was ownership, it was possession. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat at the base of a twisted pine, eyes wide, staring at the black between the trees. His hands had begun shaking again, not from fear, from the urge to move, to walk, to go somewhere he hadn't decided. His body was starting to forget what autonomy felt like. His legs twitched, his spine ached, his vision blurred at the edges, like his brain was being overwritten. He bit his tongue until it bled just to stay grounded. But the forest didn't stop. Around midnight, he heard it again. A soft hum, like the one near the pole. But now it came from within. He put his hand to his chest, felt it vibrating under his skin like something was waiting to be born. He vomited shortly after, black sludge, bitter, sour. Then the trees shifted, no wind, no storm. Just movement. The forest recoiling, making space. He turned slowly, heart pounding. And there it was, the hiker. Green backpack, flannel shirt. Only now, no face, just a blur, like his features had been scrubbed out. The figure raised one hand, beckoned, then walked into the woods. Cole didn't want to follow, but his legs did. He rose, staggered, and followed the faceless hiker. They walked for hours. No trail, no sky. Just trees folding in on themselves like ribs closing around a lung. The deeper they went, the warmer it got. Then the air changed, sour, rotten, and suddenly he was there again, the clearing, but not as it was before. Now it was alive, pulsing. Veins in the ground. A tree split in the center like an open chest cavity, and inside it, the echo, it had grown, taller, wider. Its limbs now dragging along the forest floor, its chest still open, but now with 8 faces. And the new one in the middle. His. Clear as day, eyes open, mouth twitching. It spoke with his voice. Why do you resist? Cole shook. I'm not you. You will be. I'm not ready. You were never meant to be ready. The creature stepped forward. 1 step, 2, and then it split. Down the center, revealing not just faces, but memories. Whole events played inside its chest like film, looping, flickering. His father's fists, the dog's scream, the blood on his badge, his wife's back as she left, the letter he never answered, the friend he betrayed. All of it, bare, raw. The truth in meat. You are ours, it said again. You have always been ours. And Cole fell to his knees. weeping, not out of fear, but out of recognition, because in that moment he knew he had come here for this. Not to search, not to rescue, not even to survive, but to submit, to pay, to finally be remembered for what he was, not a hero, not a protector, just another echo, a noise in the forest, another sin-shaped ghost, desperate to matter. The thing reached down, touched his forehead, and the mark on his chest opened, not with blood, but with light, cold, green, a beam into the sky, and from every tree. Voices sang, hundreds, thousands, a choir of the forgotten, the guilty, the silent, all merged into one sound, welcome home. When Cole woke, it was still night, but it wasn't the same night. The sky above was deeper now, too deep, blacker than night should be, with stars that didn't sit still. They pulsed like veins, moved like thoughts. It wasn't a sky anymore, it was a ceiling, breathing. He was lying flat, back pressed to cold earth that trembled beneath him. The mark on his chest glowed faint green, like the last flicker of a firefly. It didn't burn, it called. His limbs didn't respond at first. They felt heavy, foreign, like they belonged to something older. His fingers twitched as if relearning movement. Around him, the trees stood taller, not just in size, in posture, as if they watched now, not swaying with wind, but listening, like elders seated in judgment, looming over the court of moss and soil. He sat up slowly. The clearing had changed again. It wasn't a circle anymore. It was a spiral, etched into the ground, dozens of feet wide, winding inward. At the center, a hollow in the earth, like the start of a burrow or tunnel, wide enough for a man to crawl through. He knew what it was, an invitation or an ultimatum. Cole didn't speak, didn't curse or question. He understood this wasn't punishment, it was conversion. He was being stripped down, identity, guilt, past, purpose, until nothing remained but the echo. He wasn't scared. And that was what terrified him most. As he stood, the notebook appeared again. Not dropped, not placed, just there, tucked under a fern at his feet like it had grown there. He opened it. This time, there were no names, no sins, just one sentence. To become part of the forest, you must give it your voice. He stared at those words, felt them. What did it mean? His voice? He tried to speak. Hello. But the sound that came out was not his voice. It was layered, hollow, too many tones, as if a crowd was speaking through his mouth. He staggered back, throat burning. The trees creaked as if amused. He opened his mouth again. This time, nothing came. The echo had taken it. Not just the ability to speak, the meaning behind it. His voice was no longer his own. It had been repurposed. He dropped the notebook, turned from the spiral, and walked into the forest. He wandered for what felt like hours or minutes. Time was no longer sequential here. It folded, bent like bark in heat. He passed trees that whispered his name, each with a different intonation, as if testing how it felt. Cole, cool, Cole, call. He ignored them, kept walking, until he found something new. A cabin, not the ranger station, older, rotting. Its roof sagged inward like a broken back. Vines choked the walls. One window hung crooked, shattered but somehow intact in spirit. He stepped inside and saw his life, laid out like a museum exhibit, his old boots, His badge, the first uniform, the wedding photo, the empty beer bottles, the broken watch, all of it. On the walls, memories played like film, projected not on canvas but on bark. He watched himself at age 15, saw himself letting a man drown rather than diving in, watched the body float away, panicked and gasping. Then, 10 years later, accepting an award he didn't earn, shaking hands, smiling, lying. The cabin wasn't shelter. It was a confessional. And he was the priest and the sinner. He turned to leave, but the door had vanished. Behind him, the room stretched, grew longer, walls crawling with moss, frames made of antlers, and in the far corner, another figure, sitting in a chair. He approached slowly. It was a ranger, same uniform, different era. Older, worn, hat low over his face, his badge read, Beckett. The name struck a chord. Cole remembered an old story, a ranger who went missing in Black Pine, back in the 80s. No trace ever found, just his truck left running, door wide open. The man raised his head. His face wasn't entirely human anymore. Parts of it were bark, other parts bone. His eyes glowed faint green. "You came back," Beckett said. His voice was layered too, not like Cole's, more decayed. "What are we?" Cole asked, or thought he asked. The words didn't pass his mouth, they just became. Beckett nodded. "We're warnings." To who? To the ones who ignore the weight of memory. Cole stepped closer. Beckett's body was rooted into the chair. Literally. Thin roots crawled from his legs into the floorboards. He hadn't left this place in decades, but he hadn't died either. "Is this hell?" Cole asked. Beckett smiled. "Hell is judgment. This is record. You don't get punished here, you get kept." "For how long?" "Until the world forgets you. And even then, the forest doesn't." Cole shivered. "I don't want to be like you." Beckett laughed softly. "You already are." Then his face split down the center, and light poured out. Cole fled the cabin, back into the forest. The path twisted. He passed animals now, watching him. A fox with human eyes, a crow with too many wings, a buck that didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. And then the river. He knelt beside it, looked at his reflection. His face was still his, but the eyes, they belonged to the forest now. Not angry, not evil, just tired. He wanted to scream, but no sound came, only a soft hum, the same one he'd heard beneath the earth, the same one the clearing had sung. He was becoming the song. At sunrise, he returned to the spiral. It waited for him, still pulsing. The center had changed again. Now, instead of a hole, it was a mirror. Standing upright, smooth as water, reflecting not him, but every version of him that had ever existed. Each frame flickered. In one, he wore the uniform. In another, he wore a prison jumpsuit. In another, he had no face. In the last, he was a tree, a tall, rotting tree. Roots deep, mouth open, branches twisted like arms. And from that mouth came only one word: stay. He reached for the mirror, touched it, and it shattered into light. When the mirror shattered, the light didn't vanish. It expanded. It poured over Cole like water, thick and hot, illuminating every cell, every memory, every piece of himself he'd tried to forget. The light didn't burn, it exposed. It peeled him open from the inside. The forest had no mercy, no lies. It simply reflected back what you brought into it. He collapsed, face in the dirt, panting, the pulse in his chest now pounding through his ears, his arms, his skull. The mark had gone from green to red, a searing, crimson bloom on his sternum. It beat like a countdown. From within the trees, figures emerged again, but they weren't just echoes now, they were transformed. Lydia walked first, her limbs longer than they should have been, her eyes black pools without lids, her smile carved from sorrow. Then Carlos, flesh torn at the neck but never bleeding, his voice a low growl layered with regret. Peter came too, silent, his mouth sewn shut with thorny vines. Marla and Vince followed, almost together, their bodies bound at the arms, shuffling in a rhythm that didn't match the ground beneath them. And last, the solo hiker. But now, he had a face. It was Cole's. Cole stared at the twisted reflection of himself, hollow and inhuman, wearing the expression of a man who had long since given up on ever being forgiven. They surrounded him, moving slowly, closing the spiral as if reenacting a sacred rite. A ritual. His ritual. Cole wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He wanted to scream. But the forest had already taken his voice. The hiker version of himself stepped forward and reached out a hand, palm up. A gift, or a sentence. In his palm sat a single pine cone, old, gnarled, heavy with sap. It glistened with something darker than resin, black, oily, thick. The symbol was obvious. Take it and accept. Refuse it and fight forever. Cole's breath rattled in his chest. He thought of the people he'd let down. Not just the ones who vanished here, but the ones he failed long before he ever set foot in Black Pine. His wife, his mother. The kids he never visited in the hospital after their father was killed on a call he led. His silence, his cowardice, his voice, gone so long before the forest ever reached for it. He reached out slowly, fingers trembling. He took the pine cone. The moment it touched his skin, the world went still. The figures froze. Even the trees held their breath. Then, everything shook. The spiral collapsed inward. The figures screamed, not in pain, but in release. The forest exhaled all at once, a breath that shattered every leaf, every branch, every silence. Cole's body lit up. His skin cracked, glowing from within. The mark on his chest opened, truly opened, and light poured out. He wasn't just part of the forest now. He was its memory keeper, its mouth, its new echo. The old ones faded, dissolving into bark and moss, their service complete. Cole remained, alone at the center of the spiral. Reborn. Not as a man, not as a monster, but as a story. A whispered legend carved into wood grain and echoed in wind. And the forest began to reshape around him. Roots curled upward, forming a throne of gnarled history. Vines draped him like robes. Moss covered his skin like armor. He didn't resist. He simply opened his mouth and let the forest speak through him. Elsewhere, weeks later, two hikers passed the outskirts of Black Pine, where no signs remained. "Are you sure this trail's open?" one asked. "Yeah, GPS said there's a route here. Some old ranger station, maybe." They laughed, moved deeper into the trees, and as they vanished into the shade, the wind picked up. High above, the leaves whispered, and from the shadows a voice drifted softly, a voice layered with thousands of others. including one that had once belonged to a man named Cole. Turn around. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her name was Dana. 28, journalist. Not the kind who did fashion pieces or covered local school board fights. She specialized in unsolved cases, vanishings. The ones law enforcement dropped when the trail ran cold and public interest moved on. Black Pine was never part of her plan. She stumbled onto it while working a different case, a missing solo hiker in a different park, over 100 miles away. In one of his journals, tucked between half-burned maps and incoherent scribbles, was a single page that caught her eye. One phrase: "They always lead back to Sector 9. She almost threw it out, but something about it stuck. The handwriting was rushed, desperate. The name sounded like military slang. Cold War, maybe. She Googled it. Nothing real came up. But on some obscure back-channel forum, mostly old ex-park rangers talking wilderness weirdness, she found one post over a decade old. Username long since deleted. Title: "I worked near Black Pine. Don't believe the maps." It mentioned old search teams, people never found. And a ranger. One name dropped without context. Cole. That was all Dana needed. Now she stood at the edge of what used to be the Black Pine National Park. Or what should have been. There were no signs. No ranger gate. Just dense forest pushing up against the road like it was trying to reclaim the asphalt. She checked her GPS again. The signal was weak, bouncing, but it still marked her location with one flickering blue dot. Dead center in a patch labeled only as Restricted Forest Zone 9. Her stomach turned. She popped the trunk and pulled out her pack. Camera, a voice recorder, compass, an old-fashioned map with no label over the area she now stood near. Just a blank space. A ghost park. She stepped off the road and into the trees, and the world changed. The first thing she noticed was the silence. No birds, no wind. Even her own breathing felt muted. The further she walked, the thicker the air got, like humidity soaked in memory. Every few steps her boots snagged on old roots, like the ground itself didn't want her to go any further. A rusted trail marker, half buried in ivy. The paint long gone, but the shape unmistakable. She cleared the brush away, snapped a photo. On the back of the post, carved deep into the metal, "Run." She turned, heart rate spiking. Nothing behind her, just trees. Stillness. She kept going. Another mile in, she found what looked like part of a road, cracked and swallowed by moss. A few feet off the path, the skeleton of a truck sat tilted in a ditch. She walked closer. The door was open, long rusted through. Inside, nature had made a home. Fungus along the seats, vines wrapped around the steering column. She leaned in, wiped away dirt from the dashboard. There it was, a faded badge number etched into the corner of the radio mount. Cole, 82. She stepped back quickly, snapped another photo, then opened her notebook. So it was real. Cole had been here, and if the timeline fit, that meant the last known ranger in Black Pine had never left. She was on the right track. Night fell faster than she expected. The forest dimmed with unnatural speed, as if the sun had grown tired of fighting through the trees. She found a clearing, set up camp, tent, small fire. Enough light to stay visible, but not enough to attract predators, at least the kind she understood. Around 2 a.m., she heard the first whisper. Faint. Too faint to make out words. She sat up, flashlight in hand. It wasn't coming from one direction. It came from all directions. Then, something moved just outside the ring of firelight. Not fast, not loud, just shifted. She stepped out, light cutting through the dark. "Hello?" The voice was her own. Echoed back at her from somewhere deep in the forest. She froze, swallowed, turned slowly in a full circle. "Who's there?" She called again. Silence, then a voice. Different this time. Lower. Older. Layered. "Don't follow." She backed toward the fire, but her legs wouldn't move. Her body wanted to follow. Just a few more steps. Just into the trees. Just a little closer. She clenched her jaw and willed herself to step back. When she reached the fire's edge, the voice was gone. The spell broke. Her knees buckled. She collapsed to the dirt, gasping. At dawn, she packed up and started moving. She didn't know what pulled her deeper, but something did. Hours passed. Then she found it. The clearing. Perfect spiral burned into the forest floor. The center. A mirror still standing, though it reflected no sky. Only her. And behind her reflection, someone else. She turned fast. No one there. She looked back. Now the mirror showed a man in a ranger uniform. Face calm. Voice familiar, even though she'd never heard it before. "Dana," he said. She stumbled back. How do you know my name?" The mirror shimmered. Then the man stepped out. Not literally, more like the mirror turned inside out and reformed around him. He stood there now, ranger uniform, badge, chest glowing faint red. "Cole," she whispered. He nodded, but not like a human, more like a tree bending in the wind. "You're not alive," she said. He didn't answer. She stared at him. "You were the last one." Still no answer. "You brought them in." Finally, he spoke. His voice was hundreds layered together. Deep, faint, beautiful in a terrible way. "I remember everything." Dana's lip quivered. "My father was one of them," she said. "One of the hikers. Solo. Disappeared here in '96. Cole blinked once. "He screamed for help," he said, "but it was already too late." Tears welled in her eyes. "You watched him die." "No," Cole said. "I watched him change." The trees stirred behind him. The spiral pulsed beneath her feet. "What do you want from me?" Dana asked. Cole stepped forward, held out a pine cone, just like the one he was offered. But this one was green. Alive, untouched. "You still have a choice." She looked down at it, then back up at him. "You didn't." "I did," Cole said, "and I made it." Dana shook her head. "I didn't come here to join you. I came to end this." Cole didn't move. His voice rumbled low. "You can't end memory." She stepped back. The spiral shifted underfoot. The forest closed in, and far off, something began to stir beneath the earth. She didn't take the pine cone. She ran. And the forest didn't stop her, but it didn't forget either. Dana didn't remember how she got back. One minute, she was sprinting through the trees, spiral pulsing beneath her feet, the ranger's echo calling her name in a voice made of gravel and regret. The next, she was standing at her car, keys in her hand, hands shaking, eyes wide. Sun in the sky, just like that. No trail, no backpack, no GPS. She opened the car door, sat down, and drove. Didn't look in the rearview mirror once. She made it back to town after dark. Didn't check in with anyone. Didn't upload her files. just locked herself in the motel room and slept with the lights on. And even then, sleep didn't come easy, because in her dreams she stood at the spiral again. And Cole waited. Every night he was closer, not chasing, just waiting. Every night she heard his voice, clearer, louder, deeper. Memory is not mercy. Days passed. She tried writing the article, but every time she started, her hands froze. Words refused to form. Once, she managed a paragraph. Then the text vanished, right off the screen. She tried again on paper. Same result. The ink faded from the page like it had never been written. Whatever lived in Black Pine had followed her back. Not in form, but in truth. The forest had planted a seed. Now it was growing. She tried talking to someone. An old professor, known for chasing cryptid stories and wilderness folklore. She gave him the basics: vanishing hikers, unmapped sectors, an abandoned ranger station. He laughed it off at first until she mentioned Sector 9. His face changed. "You need to forget that name," he said. "Why? Because it remembers you." She leaned forward. "You know about it." "I know enough," he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Every park has ghosts. But Black Pine, it has a memory. That's worse." She told him about Cole, about the mirror, about the voice that followed. He didn't interrupt once. When she finished, he poured 2 drinks. Handed her one. "What do I do?" she asked. "Hope the forest forgets you." "And if it doesn't?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "Then one day you'll forget yourself." That night, she returned to her motel, sat in silence. The voice recorder in her bag clicked on by itself. She hadn't touched it. She reached for it slowly, pressed play. At first, just static. Then, faint breathing. A whisper layered beneath it. Her voice, and someone else's. Cole's, whispering in unison. "We remember what you did. Now you will too." She dropped the recorder. The lights flickered. Her reflection in the motel mirror stared back wrong, delayed, smudged at the edges. Then her eyes changed. Just for a second. They went completely black, like stone, like coals, like the trees. She screamed. The next morning, the mirror was shattered. She didn't remember breaking it. Her knuckles were raw and bleeding. Her notebook, blank again. Only one thing remained. The pine cone. It sat on the table, green, perfect, unmoving. She left the motel and drove to the nearest university library. There, in the archives, she found what she was looking for. Not official records, just rumors, unconfirmed reports. Mentions of disappearances going back over 70 years. Always near Black Pine. Always erased quickly. One file stood out, dated 1978. A ranger named Beckett. Last seen near an unnamed clearing, searching for a lost boy scout troop. Never found. Dana stared at the paper. A shiver ran through her. The name was written in the same style as the one she saw carved on the cabin chair inside the forest. That meant Cole wasn't the first. Just the most recent. And if Beckett had been marked in 78 and Cole in the 2000s, that meant it was only a matter of time before the forest needed someone new. And the way it reached for Dana, she was already next. She drove back to the forest. Not because she wanted to, because it pulled her. With every mile, her mind felt looser. Her thoughts came in echoes. Her memories blurred. She reached the same stretch of road with no sign, no gate, just trees. stepped out. The pine cone in her pocket pulsed once, then was still. She walked in. No GPS this time, no compass, just the forest's pull. After 20 minutes, the air changed. The silence returned. And then, the whisper. "Dana." She turned. Cole stood there again. Less ranger now, more root. His veins glowed faint red. His arms looked like twisted limbs. And his face? Still human, still him. But now, it carried the weight of generations. "Why me?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Why not just take me?" "You came looking?" he said. "That's all it ever takes." She swallowed. "I didn't mean to." "But you did." The spiral opened behind him. The forest breathed. "Is there any way out?" she asked. "No," he said. "There never was." She stared at the pine cone in her hand, felt its weight, its warmth. She thought of her father. Alone in these trees, she thought of Cole, of Beckett, of every name no one ever spoke again. And then she did something none of them had done. She dropped the pine cone, stepped back, and said, out loud, "I won't become your memory." The forest paused. So did Cole. Then, something cracked. A sound like trees splitting at the root. The pine cone turned black, shriveled, burned into ash. And the spiral pulsed. Once, then faded. The forest receded. The trees stepped back. Cole stepped forward. His face looked sad. Not angry, just disappointed. "You'll come back," he said. "No," Dana replied. "I'll remember, but I won't belong to you." Then she turned and walked away. And this time, the forest let her. 2 weeks after she walked out of Black Pine, Dana tried to go back to normal. She couldn't. She returned to the city. Concrete, glass, sirens. Everything fast, everything loud. People filled the sidewalks like streams of thoughtless ants. No one looked, no one listened. And yet she felt watched. Every moment, every breath. It was in the way shadows stretched unnaturally long in the afternoon. How the wind brushed her shoulder even indoors. How her voice, once sharp, confident, sometimes cracked when she said her own name. Dana. Like the forest was still saying it too, like it hadn't finished with her. She tried writing the article again. This time, she didn't use her laptop. She used a manual typewriter she borrowed from a friend. Something analog. Something that couldn't delete her words. And it worked, sort of. The pages filled slowly. She wrote about Cole, about the disappearances, about the myth that bled into memory. She described the spiral, the mirror, the pine cone, the voice. She called it The Forest That Remembers. When she finished, she sent it to 3 editors. Then she waited. 4 days later, she received 3 replies. All of them the same. 1 line. "Article declined. Doesn't exist in our inbox anymore." She checked her sent folder. Nothing there, not even a draft. She checked her trash. Empty. She checked the typewritten pages on her desk. Gone. Even the ribbon on the typewriter had been torn clean, as if the forest had reached into the city and pulled her work back into its roots. She stood there for 10 minutes, staring at the empty page. Then, finally, she whispered, "Why?" And the air answered. Softly. A breeze that passed through the apartment without touching anything but her. Because remembering isn't enough. You must carry it. She started seeing signs of it in the news, small things. A hiker lost near a small Appalachian trail. Found 4 days later, disoriented, couldn't speak. Another, ranger in Oregon. Quit mid-shift. Left a note. The trees remember things I never told anyone. A teenager in Colorado woke screaming from a coma, only said one word. Sector. The world was starting to hear. Not clearly, but faintly, like an old radio signal crackling back to life. One night, she went to a support group, missing persons' families. She sat at the back, listened. No one mentioned Black Pine, but one man spoke of a brother who vanished while backpacking near a closed forest. He called me the night before, the man said. Said he saw something, a spiral in the woods. Said it felt like being watched by every mistake he ever made. Dana's breath hitched. After the meeting, she approached him. Asked him to describe the spiral. He did, perfectly. She told him about Sector 9. He nodded once. I think that's what took him, he said, then looked her dead in the eyes. But I don't think it killed him. I think it kept him. They sat in silence for a long time. The next morning, she found a pine cone on her kitchen table. Green. Alive. She hadn't opened the windows. She hadn't brought it in. She stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. It was warm, beating, like a heart. She didn't throw it away. She didn't burn it. She placed it on the windowsill. Let it sit. And every night she listened to the hum in the walls, the creak of wood that hadn't been cut from trees in decades, the whisper of memory trying to grow. Then came the letter. No return address, no stamp, just her name. Inside, one page, typed on old paper. Dana, you're not the first to walk away, but you might be the last to speak. If you want to stop it, you have to go deeper. There's a root beneath the spiral, a place where the first memory was planted. They call it the hollow. That's where it sleeps. That's where you end it, or become it. See Cole, still reaching her, still trying to finish what the forest started. She folded the letter, stared at the pine cone. She thought of her father, the empty tent, the spiral, the mirror, the offer, and she realized something. Black pine didn't grow just because people vanished. It grew because people forgot. And now she remembered, clearly, sharply, fully. And she knew what she had to do. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't leave a note. She took the pine cone and drove back to the forest. Not to walk, not to run, not to be taken, but to find the hollow. To go deeper, to reach the root, and either plant herself forever or rip the forest out. She didn't hesitate this time. Dana stepped back into Black Pine like someone walking into their own grave. But it wasn't fear that fueled her. It was clarity. She'd seen the spiral. She'd heard the voices. She knew her name no longer belonged entirely to her. Now, it was time to go below it all, to the hollow, to whatever slept there. She left the car where the road gave up and hiked in with only one thing in her pocket, the pine cone. Still green, still pulsing. The forest knew she was coming. It didn't try to stop her. No tricks, no illusions, no whispers. Not yet. The stillness was worse. Like the woods were holding their breath, waiting to see what she would do. She passed the rusted trail marker, now bent and half swallowed by moss. She passed the clearing where she first saw Cole. The mirror was gone. So was the spiral, just grass now. Untouched. False peace. She kept walking, following the pull. It wasn't instinct, it wasn't compass. It was inside her. A tug that led not north or east, but inward. The deeper she went, the less the forest looked like a place and more like a mind unraveling. Trees bent the wrong way. Roots tangled like veins. Rocks pulsed like heartbeats. Time fell apart. She'd blink, and the light would shift, from dusk to noon to full black and back again. The forest wasn't just memory. It was refusing linearity, trying to confuse her. But she wouldn't forget why she came, not this time. After what could have been hours or minutes, she saw it. The ground dipped into a crater. Wide, gutted. Trees circled the edge like mourners around a grave. In the center, a hole, not like the one from the spiral. This one breathed. The hollow. She stepped into it, and the world closed behind her. There was no light, just the soft glow from her pine cone. It lit the path downward, slick stone, damp and warm like flesh. She crawled. Down and down and down, every inch, the walls whispered. Voices, hundreds, not ghosts. Memories, not just hers. Everyone's, a ranger whispering names through a mouth full of dirt. A woman begging not to be forgotten. A child apologizing for something they never did. The tunnel went deeper. The pine cone grew hotter in her hand. Then, she reached the bottom. A vast cavern, so wide she couldn't see the edges. In the center, a tree, massive, dead, but not rotted. Its bark was white, bone-like. Its branches reached into the black like grasping hands. And at its base, something moved. She stepped closer. It wasn't a creature, it was a mass. Thousands of faces, mouths open, eyes blank, all fused together like roots in decay, the oldest memory, the first echo, and at the center of them all, Cole, or what was left of him. His face no longer carried sorrow, only silence. He looked up and spoke with every voice in the forest. "You came to end this." She nodded. "I came to choose." The ground trembled. The pine cone turned black in her hand. "You cannot kill memory," the thing said. "Only bury it deeper." Dana took a step forward. "I don't want to kill it." She held up the pine cone. "I want to replant it." Cole frowned. Or maybe the tree did. "Memory spreads," he said. "Then let it," Dana said, "but not like this." She knelt at the base of the tree and buried the cone in the dirt. The faces screamed. The forest above roared. The hollow shook, and the tree cracked. Light burst from its trunk, cold, clear, blue, not green, not red, something new, something awake. Dana screamed as the light poured over her. And then she saw everything, not just black pine, all of it. Every forest that remembered, every name erased. Every sin buried beneath bark and soil. They weren't just forgotten, they were waiting, and she had just opened the door. When she awoke, she was in a hospital bed, covered in dirt. Eyes bloodshot, mouth dry. A nurse stood over her. "Miss Dana?" she asked. "You've been missing for 13 days." Dana didn't respond. She looked at her hands, still trembling, but not from fear, from purpose, because now she knew what she had to do. The forest was open, the hollow was cracked, and memory was no longer confined to trees. It lived in her now, and the world would hear it, one echo at a time. The first time she heard it again was in a subway tunnel. Dana had been back for a month. Physically, at least. The hospital released her with a clean bill of health. No signs of trauma, no dehydration, not even a broken nail. As if she'd never been crawling through the hollow or buried beneath black pine. But she knew better. Because the moment she stepped into a crowd, she felt it. The memory, moving between people like static on clothes, clinging, spreading. It started small, someone on a train saying her name under their breath. Then again, in a bookstore. Whispers coming from inside closed novels. She turned the page of an old forestry textbook once and found a note that hadn't been there a second before. You opened the hollow. It won't close again. She burned the book that night. Didn't help. She began seeing patterns in news articles, missing persons cases, places being swallowed by sudden overgrowth, trails closed due to biological abnormalities, voicemails from disconnected numbers, always the same message. We remember. She stopped answering calls, stopped writing. But she kept walking. City blocks felt like trails now. Skyscrapers like trees. Every corner a chance to see something that didn't belong, and yet had always been there. Memory wasn't fading. It was rising, like tide, like flood, like consequence. One night, she returned to the apartment and found the spiral carved into her front door. Perfect, precise, fresh. She didn't call the cops. She just stared at it for a long time, then ran her fingers over the grooves. Still warm. She whispered, "I know what you want." And the door opened. Not because she turned the handle, because it let her in. Inside, the lights didn't work. The air felt thick, not humid. Remembering. She walked to her desk, and there it was again. The notebook, blank. She opened it, found only one line. Plant the final seed. She looked out the window and saw the pine cone, still sitting on the ledge. But now it was black and pulsing, waiting. That night she had the dream again. She stood in the spiral. But it wasn't black pine anymore. It was the city. Concrete had split. Streetlights bent like branches. People walked around the edges but never looked inside. She stood at the center, and Cole was there, but not as a man, as a tree, tall, rooted into asphalt, face still his, eyes closed. "Is this what you wanted?" she asked. His eyes opened. "No," he said, "but it's what we are now." She woke up to screaming. Outside her window, 2 buildings away, vines were curling up a brick wall. Fast, too fast. They broke glass, cracked stone. Police cordoned it off, blamed a freak fungal growth. But she knew better. The hollow was spreading, no longer underground, no longer rooted in a place, but in her, and now into everything else. She booked a train that night, north, back toward where it all started, not to Black Pine. She couldn't go there anymore. The place had moved. She was it now. But there was still a place she hadn't touched, the root, the final seed, the memory no one had dared speak aloud. Her father. She hadn't said his name since the first day she entered the spiral, not once, not out loud. She arrived at the trailhead where he disappeared in 1996. There was no trail anymore, just undergrowth. But the moment she stepped off the road, it parted for her, not violently, lovingly, as if the forest had been waiting. She walked for hours until she found the tree, not just any tree, the one from her nightmares, white bark, no leaves. At its base, a small wooden box. She knelt, opened it. Inside, a photograph. Her father, smiling. Next to a ranger in uniform, Cole. They'd known each other. She dropped the photo, stumbled back, everything clicked. Her father hadn't been a victim. He'd been the first witness, maybe even the first offering. And now, she was the last. The forest wasn't trying to destroy her. It was trying to finish the story he started, to make it whole. She took the pine cone from her pocket. It was glowing now, not green, not red, but blue, new, balanced. She placed it in the box, closed the lid, buried it, and whispered, "Remember," then stood, turned, and walked away, not chased, not pulled, freed, but marked, always marked. That was 1 year ago. Today, Dana teaches a university seminar. Title, Folklore as Ecosystem, How Stories Shape Reality. She never says the words black pine, never mentions coal, never brings up the hollow. But her students take notes, they ask questions, they dig. And sometimes one of them says, "I heard a ranger went missing once. No trace, just his voice on the wind." She smiles and replies, "Some stories don't end. They echo." Outside her window, a small tree grows, alone, different from the others. Its bark is white. Its leaves shift color with the seasons. Green, red, then, finally, blue, balanced. Remembered.